Okay, so today we're going to start to kind of go into how you innovate. That's kind of a big question. Sounds kind of big, but it's actually not that big when you look into it. So kind of the program, what we're going to look at is, well, first we're going to define innovation. Like, what is it? Because that's a word that gets thrown around quite a lot. And actually, what does it mean is another question. Now we're going to kind of look at, after that, at how it happens, like what happens, what needs to happen for innovation to happen. Then we're going to turn into the world of innovators, and we're going to look at how innovators function. Like, how are they different or the same as us, and how can we become like them? Then we're going to turn to how we can get better at innovating, and that kind of goes with the innovators. And then we're going to finish up kind of the session with design thinking, which is a really cool tool that innovators use a lot, actually, to create cool things. So, first thing, what is innovation? Now, innovation requires a few things. First, it requires an idea, right? That sounds pretty obvious. Requires an idea or discovery, something that's new, something that you come up with. Now, is having an idea the same as innovation? What's missing for innovation to occur? Anybody has an idea? Yes, I heard a good word, action. So once you have an idea, if you just keep it in your head, you don't really have an innovation, you have an idea. Now, for an innovation to happen, on top of your idea, you need your idea to be implemented, something to happen, right? And that gives you innovation. Now, when we think about innovation, do you guys think about those guys? Who among you are coming into this room thinking the innovators are those guys? Show of hands. Do you think Einstein was a good innovator and that's who you need to be? You need to be Einstein, you need to be super smart like Einstein to innovate? Yeah, some of you do think so. Now the good thing is you're going to see, not quite. Everybody can do that. Now everybody starts thinking that way, right? We all think the person, we can imagine like the cool scientist in the lab with the white coat, you know, working on their microscope, and you think that's how innovation happens, and you think that's what an innovator is. Or you think Einstein, brilliant scientist, somebody who can come up with so many things and who is so much smarter than we are, right? Well, the good news is innovation's not completely like that. Here's how innovation can happen. A lot of innovation actually happens by accident. You mean to do something and you do something else, and that can give to you an innovation to you. That's how the microwave oven was invented, or nonstick, or gunpowder. And that's also how this thing was invented. This thing that, has any of you never used a Post-it? Everybody's used a Post-it before, right? Well, you know what? The guy who invented Post-it, he was actually trying to come up with a great glue, something that sticks and never gets out. And he came up with a really crappy glue. But does that mean that was not a good innovation? I mean, nobody in this room has never used a Post-it, right? We've all used it. It was a great innovation out of a really crappy experiment. Now, we do see how you do need to get the idea. Once you have invented your glue, you need to know, what do I do with this crappy experiment? Can I do something with it, right? Another way that innovation happens, we just thought about the great scientist. Well, the great scientist sometimes comes up with innovation because it's an accident. Now, another thing that happens when you are trying to innovate that we don't necessarily think about is innovators are not alone. They work with other people. And it's by working with other people that they can invent stuff. That is how airplanes were invented. Actually, it took them like 200 experiments, and they crashed like 7 machines before they managed to make the wings correctly. It took them a long time. And it's by working together as a team that they did that. That's how Google started. That's how the Beatles happened. The Beatles with just one person would not be the Beatles, right? So that kind of brings it down a little bit. We can be innovators. We don't have to be super great Einstein scientists. All we need is good teams, and we need cool ideas, and we need to clearly try a bunch of things and mess up a bunch of times, right? Now, another thing that's kind of cool is, where does innovation happen? This one scientist, Kevin Dunbar, asked himself that question. He was like, where does innovation actually happen? Now, he looked at what we think is fancy, right? He went into a biotech lab, and he was like, that's a very fancy place where they invent lots of stuff. So how do they come up with those ideas, actually, in there? What do they do? And so what he did is he used technology. He put cameras everywhere, and he started filming people in their everyday work life. And he filmed people in a lot of different settings. Now, up top, you see the microscope. So people do work under a microscope. People sometimes work together in a project. Or sometimes people just don't want to work. They grab coffee. They go sit down at the table, and they talk about a bunch of things, not necessarily work-related. Now, where do you think innovation happens? Who thinks it's under the microscope, where you're like working hard? Now, there's a trap. That's why nobody's showing hands, and you're right. That's because we think it might be under the microscope. That's where they do the serious work, right? But it's not there that most ideas come out. And it's not by collaborating on a project either, where you're working together on the same thing. Actually, where people came up with the most innovative ideas was just grabbing coffee or having team meetings, having everybody around the same table talking about a whole bunch of different things. And because they were talking about a whole bunch of different things, all of a sudden, it was like, oh, you're working on this? Wait, I've been having this problem with my own stuff. Like, how do you do that? How do you manage to get that done, And it's by doing stuff like that people came up with those great ideas and actually move forward. Now, don't go out and think that it's by just drinking coffee and doing nothing that you can come up with cool stuff, right? It's not just that. All right, now we're going to work on ourselves. When you think about innovation, this is just a sample of things. This is a number of skills. Now, all of you will agree with me. Those are cool skills to have, right? All of those skills are cool to have. Now, I want you to take a pen. You have a little piece of paper. And I want you to take a couple minutes to kind of rank where you're the best at and to where you're the worst at. You just number them out by what you think you've been doing and how you think you've been doing. And that's going to help you come up with a plan. Who among you thought that analyzing was #1 skill? A few. Who said observing? All right, a few as well. How about detail orientation? That's pretty evenly split so far. How about questioning? Oh, a few more. How about planning was #1? Nice. How about experimenting? Cool. How about self-discipline? All right. And networking? All right, I have people in all categories, and actually I have a few people in each category. This is great. Now, let's see what happens. If you chose as your #1 skill, a skill that is in the purple, then you're very good at executing. If you chose as your #1 skill a skill that is more in the gold, then that is what highly innovative people tend to do more, right? They tend to be more in the yellow skills. Now, for those of you who are starting to get depressed right away, do not get depressed. This was just the first step. You'll see. You can get much better at this, and as we said, is an idea enough? Or don't we need good executors also, right? Now, here are the behaviors of good executors to the right. That were the ones that were purple. And then to the left, you have the behaviors of the innovators. Now, you need both the innovators and the executors to actually have an innovation. It's very important. Now, what we're working on right now is coming up with cool ideas, right? Which is why we're focusing on the yellow. And the yellow column, which has, as you can say, 4 behaviors plus this 5th one there. This 5th one is not a behavior. It's more of a way of thinking, right? It's a cognitive skill. It's what's happening in your brain. And so we're going to walk through all of those and look at how to get better at those and what they cover, what they are really. Now here's the equation for how to be a good innovator. You have to question, you have to observe, network, and experiment, and then you have to exercise this one skill that you're using your brain for, this cognitive skill, which is associating. And that gives you a creative idea, right? Now, this is why I say don't get depressed. The good news is somebody ran an experiment on twins. Now, twins, they're genetically the same, right? And those twins were raised apart. And at some point, they were somewhere between teenagers and young adults, they ran experiments on them. And they tested their IQ, and they tested their creativity. Now, IQ is only about 80% genetic. The rest of it can be changed. And creativity is just 1/3 genetic, which means everything else is all you. Everything else is you working on things and getting better at things. Now, that means that being an innovator is reachable for everybody, right? Because it's mostly you and what you learn. Now, let's look at the first skill. The first skill is about observing. Now, a good innovator is somebody who is capable of going around and looking at everything with new eyes. Observe is not just about looking and then forgetting, right? It's about looking, but looking intently, looking with purpose. So it's about looking at people, it's about looking at the things around you, services around you, the companies around you. Anybody who is starting a startup does all of these things. They look at the technologies that exist, they look at other people, they talk to people, they observe the world. And actually taking a step back, without observing current society, you can observe a lot of other things. How about Velcro? See, that came from observation. Velcro, actually, the person who invented Velcro had a dog. The dog loved to go around everywhere in the bushes, right? Dogs like to do that. Now, the dog would come back, and how many of you have had those seeds attached to them? They're so annoying, right? You can't get them out. They're really annoying. Now, the person who invented Velcro could have said, hey, that's really annoying, and you, dog, are very annoying because you're going in the bushes and you're coming back with all these things attached to you and I have to remove them, right? But instead, he removed them and he looked at them and he was like, you know what? This property can be kind of cool, actually. Can I actually turn this thing that's really annoying right now into something useful? And that's how you come up with Velcro. Now, do some of you know about others that are invented from nature? Other things that look like nature? Yeah, planes. They can remind you of birds, for instance. Another thing is a zipper, which is kind of like a plane. You know how a zipper goes in like this? Do you know what else goes in like this? Exactly right, and locks in. They kind of do that. You're right. They kind of do that. I don't know if that's what is making them lock so much as the muscle. I think what the inspiration was behind the zipper was actually the bird feathers. The bird feathers are kind of that way, and they have little barbs, and that's how they keep together. And that's why when you open them, you can't close them up again, because we don't have a beak and we don't know how to do that. So that's another one. Helicopters as well. You know the wings of the helicopters, the rotor? Have you seen the seeds that do that too? That's a cool idea that just by observing you get to. So by observing, you can come up with lots of stuff, right? Observing nature, observing people, observing companies, you come up with lots of stuff. Very powerful. The next thing that you can exercise is questioning. Okay, now you've observed things, but just looking is not enough. Now you need to question things. Now this is a good question, for instance. The answer is not quite obvious, right? Why is a computer 5 times as much as the sum of its parts? That's not obvious at all. And only by asking this question can you actually come up with potentially a business model for a company, by asking questions like this. Now, we're going to look at 2 kinds of questions. To ask a really cool question and to really come up with ideas, you need to ask a question that will get you to create, right? So those questions can be, why can I, or why can't I? Can be, what if the world were different? You can, essentially they need to challenge something that exists, right? And something that's important when you question, you have to open yourself up to the answer, even if the answer is not what you want to hear. And good innovator is somebody who is capable of hearing bad news, text them in, and it's like, okay, this is not what I expected. Now what do I do with that, right? So, some good questions impose constraints. That means that you're going to narrow down your world. So, let's imagine you're a company, right? And all of a sudden, you're going to ask yourself and your team, what if it became forbidden to sell things to the people we're currently selling to? None of our customers can buy our products. How do we keep being a company? How do we keep making money? Now, this question may sound silly, but if you think about it, that is going to force you to think out of the box, right? So that is a question that imposes constraints. How about, what if we could not talk to people in reality? We could not be here today. We could only talk to each other through digital means. How would that change the world? Like, how would you deal with the world all of a sudden if you couldn't talk to people directly, right? So that's another example of question that imposes constraints. Now, you can do the exact opposite. Those are also going to get you to be creative, right? Some good questions eliminate the constraints. So, the $100 million question. What if you had an unlimited amount of money to create? Then you stop thinking in your box, you stop imposing the constraints on you, all of a sudden you're thinking, hey, we forget that money is a concern in creating something. What could we do? You go wild. Then you're going to go back to reasonable. What if I could do everything in half the time that I'm thinking it's going to take? Right? What if I could go at Superman speed? What would happen? This is another good question, because then you can come up with an objective and then you see, hey, is there actually a process to get to it? So instead of starting by thinking, I can't do this, this is impossible, because this is the mindset that you think from, right? You think it's impossible. Forget that it's impossible. Imagine that it is possible, and then think about a way to get to it, if it's possible. Maybe it's not, but at least you've envisioned it and you've tried to get to it. So those are 2 really powerful kinds of questions that you can ask yourselves. 2 ways to ask questions. Now the next step. You've observed a bunch of things. You've asked yourself a bunch of questions. Another behavior that innovators have is the experiment. And you know a company that does a lot of experiments? There's a company that I'm sure most of you have heard of, is Amazon. Amazon does a ton of experiments. And the way that they do that is they have small teams work together and just ask, what if we could do that? Put together hypotheses, thinking, hey, I am going to hypothesize that a customer might want this kind of product. And then they test. They run the experiment. They start thinking about it. Is that true or is that not true? And it's only by running a ton of experiments that you can come up with cool ideas, because you're actually putting all those ideas into practice, small practice, and you're refuting, or you're actually coming up with something that works. And this is actually a quote from Jeff Bezos that says that Amazon is trying to run as many experiments as they can with, of course, because money is a constraint. You can ask yourself the question, what if money were not a constraint, but money is, then you try to reduce the cost. And we're going to look at how that looks like together. So that's experimenting. Then you have a fourth behavior. The fourth behavior is prototyping. Now, you have your idea of your cool product. You need to kind of put it in practice a little bit. You don't need to put it in practice a lot, but a little bit to figure out, what it's going to actually look like. So it's not just in your brain, so you can actually visualize it, because visualizing helps a lot in the creation process. Now, prototyping can take many names and many shapes and sizes. There's all sorts of prototypes, and we'll see that together in a minute. Then the last skill is networking. Now, networking means confronting yourself and your little box that you're living in as a person with lots of other people and lots of other ideas. Now, there's this person called Steven Johnson. Steven Johnson came up with this idea of what he calls a liquid network. And he said that the best ideas happen when a piece of idea from one person collides with a piece of idea from another person. And so that means that it's important to actually go out into the world and talk to a lot of people of a lot of backgrounds with lots of views of the world, and that's how you come up with cool ideas. And that's how BlackBerry was invented, for instance. Came up from this. So a network, for it to come up with productive ideas, we just said, needs to be very diverse, right? It needs to be diverse in gender, diverse in different kinds of things that you do in life, professionally, different industries, different nationalities maybe, different age groups, socioeconomic groups. Can be all sorts of different things, you name it. Now, here's going to be the challenge. I'm going to leave you about a couple minutes. I want you to put down as many names as you can of who would you go to if you wanted to test a new idea or come up with a new idea. Who are the people you go to? Many of you probably haven't completed all 10 names, and that's all right. And many of you have probably thought, now that we've looked at all these criteria, that list could be enlarged, could be looked at. And that's precisely what I want you to do. I want you to take that list, and when you go back home, if you want to come up with cool ideas, think about other people, or how you can meet other people if you don't know other people to go to bump ideas with. And Steven Johnson here does say, chance favors the connected mind. This is this idea that the more you go out into the world, the more you go to, conferences about things you know nothing about. Oh, maybe some of you did that today, for instance. That's a great thing to do. That's what innovators do. They come to things they know nothing about, and they just kind of start thinking about it. And it's by colliding all these ideas that you get to be a great innovator. Now, we have one last thing to look at, right? We've looked at a number of behaviors. We've got at questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting, which goes with prototyping. And we are missing that one cognitive skill. Now, the cognitive skill is the way that you, in your brain, will approach the creative process. That cognitive skill is this ability to connect things that are not related and kind of put them together. And don't worry, we're going to put it into practice so you actually see what that means. And it's got, same thing, a lot of names, from creative thinking to associating to lateral thinking. Now, let's look at this. You actually have it in your book. I will want you to work for a few minutes just with the people in your table. Try to debrief and try to come up with ideas of how, from this microwave oven, you can take things from the microwave oven and transfer it into the dishwasher. How could you come up with a product that is kind of a hybrid of the two? Think about what a microwave oven does. Think about what it looks like. Think about all these things about a microwave oven you can come up with. And think about a dishwasher, and think about how you could blend the two. Want to tell me what kind of ideas you came up with? Yeah. All right.
So we did a left and right analysis where microwaves take seconds, they're small objects, they do single servings. And then on the right we had dishwashers take hours, they're large objects, they do things in bulk. And then we started genetically crossing these things, coming up with things like a large multi-serving microwave or a small single place setting dishwasher, along with things like a fast-acting dishwasher where it would just blast at one time with water and then turn on the microwave component in order to cook all the bacteria away. And we figured for like a single place setting that would be very good as long as you pre-washed away all the chunks.
Cool. Awesome. That was a bunch of really cool ideas. Anyone else wants to share something else? Yeah?
Okay, so for ours, we actually thought of the component of how the washer is able to actually kind of wash away stuff, and we thought, well, what if we took the cooking part of the microwave and made it into a giant steam cooker where you can actually just like steam up like some cabbage or maybe make some rice and stuff like that.
Awesome.
And that component would be really neat.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. Anyone else came up with cool ideas? Lots of shy people? All right. I'm not going to call on you yet. Careful. That's really cool. So I'm sure you found the process that just like emulating with lots of people just having ideas, right? You just did lateral thinking. You just took those two products and you just thought about them. How'd you blend those together, right? Just a process, doing a process like this is how you come up with cool ideas. And you saw that in 3 or 4 minutes, you're already coming up with potential things that you can do, right? Now, the next part of the process is if you want to come up with a product that's going to give you an actual startup, or an actual company, well, you're still at the idea stage, right? Now, you need to start designing your product. And that is what design thinking is partly about. It's about coming up with a cool idea. It can help you come up with the idea. Then it can help you make sure that this idea is a good idea. And it can help you come up with something that will be a business idea or a startup idea that is sustainable. And all of that fast and cheap. Does that sound cool? Sounds really cool, right? It's helping you create something that can create an impact fast and cheap. Now, design thinking looks like this. The first thing that you do, and what is unique about design thinking, is instead of coming up with a product in a vacuum and then you'll be like, okay, let's produce it and send it to the market and see if people buy it. Design thinking does the opposite. It goes talk to people first. Now, that's what designers do. They go talk to people first and they ask them lots of questions. Not necessarily about products, actually. They ask them lots of questions about their lives, about what works them in their life, what doesn't work in their life, what they would like to change. And they try to understand people. That's what designers do. So the first thing in design thinking is going and talking to people and trying to understand people and trying to understand their life, empathizing with them. All right. Now, you've talked to people. The next thing you do is you come back home and you're going to try to put down on paper what you heard. You're going to try to formulate questions or formulate hypotheses or problems that you're going to be trying to solve, right? So that takes the team back together, debriefing, essentially, putting it back on paper to try to define what it is you're going to try to solve. Now, after you do that, you're going to take the third step. Now, you have your questions, you have your things you want to try to solve. From that, you're going to go into ideation mode. Ideation mode is what you just did. You took something, you were trying to solve a problem, you were trying to create a hybrid because somebody told you you needed a hybrid, and you went into ideation, and you came up with ideas. How do I solve this problem that I came up with? How do I combine a dishwasher with something that I can cook in? Maybe I can do both. What if I could do both? How do I make a dishwasher finish super fast as a microwave? Can I do that? Would that solve a problem? Now, after the ideation stage, you come up with those ideas. You're going to do something that's called a prototype. Now, how many of you came into this room today thinking that creating a prototype means building a gigantic machine that represents what you're going to build in the factory. Quite a few, right? We all think that this is going to be very complicated. We'll see that it's actually not complicated necessarily. Now, we've already heard from Chu that you can just use a 3D printer and maybe you can make a model out of plastic. Maybe that's a prototype, and maybe that allows you to figure out what it is you're building, right? And it's going to help you create another product. And actually, 3D printing, which is very cheap, has been used to create real products, things that you use just like that. Now, after you've prototyped your idea, you're going to go back to your person that you talked to first, and you're going to test it with them. You're going to be like, hey, I created this dishwasher that finishes in 3 seconds. What do you think about this? Give me feedback. What do you think? Right? And from their feedback, you're going to take that feedback, you're going to bring it back home, and you're going to start all over again until you get to only positive feedback and until your potential customer tells you, this is awesome, this is what I want, this is exactly what I had in mind, and that solves my problem exactly. Right? That's the power of design thinking, is that we used to think in business that you just design something and you just put it on the market, you put it in the store and you see if people buy it. Well, actually, with design thinking, it's very powerful because you go talk to the people before you even design your product, so you design with them instead of just designing for them. And it's really cool that way. Now, sounds intimidating. Let's make a product. You just came up with a whole bunch of cool ideas, right? So, let's assume that you've talked to a bunch of people outside, right? That talking to these people outside, you came up with this idea that you needed to hybridize this microwave oven and this dishwasher, right? You came up with that. Now you came up with cool ideas at your tables. Well, from this idea, we're going to want to build a prototype. Now, we just said that maybe it's not quite as complicated as building an actual dishwasher, because if we were building an actual dishwasher, it would take us a long time. Prototyping can look like this. You use just about anything you have at your disposal. The idea of what's called paper-thin prototyping or rapid prototyping is to just give the person that you're going to be talking to just an idea of what it is you have in mind. You don't need to actually build a product. All you need is to tell them a story, right? So that is what we're going to be doing right now. We're going to be building a prototype for something you came up with. And if you didn't come up with a cool idea, you can come up with something different. It's okay too, by the way. But you're going to be prototyping this, and you're going to be explaining what it is that you prototyped. So you're going to have 2 tasks. You're going to be taking a bunch of supplies. There's a bunch of supplies down here. So when I tell you to come by table, you can come and pick up a pair of scissors, pipe cleaners, whatever it is that you need. You're going to come back, and you're going to come up with a cool prototype that kind of helps you tell a story of what it is you just invented. The second thing you need to do is to designate one person at your table who can tell the story in 1 minute. You have 1 minute to tell the story of this new thing you invented that nobody knows nothing about. This is time for pitching. All right. You guys have up to 1 minute to talk about what it is that you invented. Anyone wants to volunteer to start? One table, or do I just designate a table? All right.
That's okay. So can you just hold it? Okay. So we are Team Tiny. We are Team Tiny. We are targeting the tiny house market, and we have discovered a way of not only merging the capabilities of a dishwasher and a microwave, but of solving the problem of storing your equipment between uses. So our system starts with a small microwave unit that is the size of 2 plates. These are our plates. When you're preparing your meal, you put your meal on your plate, and you slot it into a double-decker small microwave. Oh. You then activate the microwave functionality to prepare your meal, laying your fork and spoon out on your table ready to enjoy your meal. When your food is ready, you pop it out of our unit. You enjoy your delicious meal. And when you come back, when you're done, you give your plates a quick little scrub off. You put them back into position. You put the fork and spoon back into position. You activate it. It sprays it once with water. It then activates the microwave component to kill all bacteria using heat. And then you can just leave the forks, the spoon, and plates inside the unit to store them inside of your tiny house. We're targeting Portland. Our Series A starts tomorrow. Thank you very much.
We have another volunteer team. All right.
Okay, so we are taking a popular item. Stand up. Okay. The shower head. And this is going to be absolutely revolutionary. So this shower head is going to act much like what the hand air dryers do in the bathroom. So after showering, it takes recycled air from the room and will shoot it out at, I guess, a high pressure and blow the water off of you. And there will be multiple in the shower, kind of hitting that trend of being in showers that hit you from all directions. And so it'll blow all the water off of you, and you don't need to use a towel.
Nice. All right. Who else might want to talk to us about an idea? All right, I have a table right there.
Right on. So we came up with a concept for cleaning hard-to-reach areas. People are familiar with the Roomba, the little vacuum cleaner that can go along the flat space, but what happens when you get to the stairs? No one likes to do that part. So we came up with the Stair Spider. And what the Stair Spider does is it knows when the stairs are there, and it climbs up and down your stairs and handles all that stuff. We got its little dust sack there. And this guy can be repurposed to get under your cabinets or also under the seats of your cars, because who wants to reach their hand under all these tough places? Let's sub it out to a little spider who can do the job. So there are the stairs, and there's our Stair Spider. Okay? Thank you.
Congratulations. That sounds like an exciting thing. I would want to buy that. You guys ready? All right.
So, we did the entertaining microwave dishwasher. So it's small, like a microwave. It's gonna wash dishes while it has a light show, and you can like sit in front of it and watch the lights and the water. And then we want it to have like the burbling brook sound effect. So it's useful and fun.
That sounds really cool. Party at home. Who's next?
So what we did is we created a shoe wax spray. And so there's like this heater in the middle that has holes in it, and it heats up the wax evenly in the bottle, and then these holes allow the wax to like flow through it, and then you spray it on your shoes, and like you can't get it dirty or wet, and you can like go in puddles and stuff like that, and it won't get dirty.
Awesome. That sounds really cool. We're having cool ideas. Lots of ideas.
Okay, so we got a basic idea of basically just a microwave and a dishwasher combined. So the I can't open it. Okay, so we got the microwave here and then the dishwasher. And so what you do is you stick in your plate, heat it up for whatever you want, and then you can, after you're done eating, put it back in, and it's like there's no nothing underneath. So there's like, I don't know the mechanics, but there'd be something that would twist it and like gently put it into the rack. And you can also do this with utensils, just put it into the microwave. But you can also open this up just to do like a normal dishwasher.
Awesome. Cool. Nice job. All right.
And then just real quick, we will be doing one at a time. We'll be excusing tables to go ahead and get lunch because we still want to see everyone's projects. So, but while we'll do that, don't mind the noise of the food, and we will excuse you guys one by one. So thank you.
All right. So here's our product, in which is this product was actually mainly for artists or people who have problems keeping track of their pens or want to organize better. So this is like a binder-like device that was supposed to have metallic magnetic strips in it, where you're supposed to put your pens and pencils, and it comes with like small like little things that you're able to stick to your pens or pencils and stick them in to it, and you're also able to put Velcro in it and stick in a sketchbook or whatever book you need to read during that time. You can also, and behind the sketchbook would be a file holder where you're able to organize your papers and loose papers.
Awesome. Good job. Who else hasn't pitched their idea yet that might want to pitch? Nobody else want to talk to us about their idea? I got some people volunteered here. Oh, that looks like a really cool prototype.
Oh. Okay. So our prototype. So where does it start? Oh, so you put your plate in there with your food. It's a microwave dishwasher thingy. So you put your plate in there, and then it has a conveyor belt. So when it finishes like steaming it, cleaning it with the sanitizer part, then it goes on to the microwave part, and it cleans. Oh yeah, I forgot, it cleans it too. And then the plate, you heat your food up, and then there's a little flat part and a conveyor belt that goes down. So when you finish heating your food and eating it, you put it in there, and then it drops down and cleans the dishes. So yeah.
Awesome. Anybody else? Not sure I've heard all the teams. If there's no volunteers, I guess we might stop here. So thanks a lot, everybody, for participating.